Boom! What's up, Internet? In this video, I'm going to review the Qanba Q2 Glow arcade stick. It's the new arcade stick from Qanba. ADARC was so generous to provide me with one PS3 and one Xbox version of the arcade stick. I will be giving these arcade sticks away to my PayPal and Twitch subscribers, so if you're interested in that, check out the description. Everyone always points down and shit on YouTube, so I thought I'd do that too. Anyway, so let's get down to business. Let's talk about this arcade stick. Alright, Internet, those of you who know me know that I'm all about function. Before we get into all the light-up, stuff about this arcade stick, I want to talk about it just as an arcade stick out of the box. Is it going to do what you buy an arcade stick to do? Then we could talk about all the lights and all that stuff. First thing I noticed is the Qanba Q2 case is being reused here. However, as you can see, this case has this chrome plating on it. Now, I don't know exactly what the process is to plating an arcade stick that's made out of plastic with some kind of a metallic paint, but it definitely is cooler to the touch than plastic is. So I prefer that. Not only aesthetically does it look like it's more of a, sturdier, but it also feels a lot better to the touch. It feels like an arcade cabinet, which is what I prefer as well. So that's really cool. Another thing I noticed here is just like the Q2 case, you have the start button that's on a different, a different tier than the rest of the arcade stick, which is going to prevent accidental starts, which I always love. All of your functions with turbo and the LEDs and stuff are also going to be on this lowered tier here on the right side. So that's cool. Everything's working out so far. Another thing that I noticed is that this arcade stick has a handle up here. Now, typically, I'm not a huge fan of handles on arcade sticks. The reason I say that is because the only other one that I can really think of that has a handle up here is the Qanba Q4 RAF, or whatever it's called. I have to say, that handle on top of that looks atrocious. It makes it look like a briefcase, and I really don't like that look. However, this is nice and flush, nice handle. I like that you don't look like a douchebag when you're carrying this around, which is really, really cool. Another thing you'll notice on the bottom of this arcade stick is this interesting material here. Now, I watched another review on this arcade stick, and in that review, the guy mentioned that this is a leather material. So, first thing I did when I got my hands on one of these is, that's not leather. Everyone knows leather has a smell, and that is not leather on the bottom. However, it is some kind of plastic leather type of a hybrid thing, and it does exactly what it's there to do. It keeps the stick firmly secured on your lap. It doesn't move around. Now, the thing is, I don't know if I prefer this leather down bottom side over the ADARC felt that you find on the bottom of the ADARC Fusion. I really like the felt, but I presume that this will have a longer lifespan than the felt. That is total assumption, because I've had my ADARC Fusion, I don't even know how long it's been, since they were invented. So, and the bottom of that arcade stick is still looking great. So that's really a question of which one lasts longer, I guess. Both do basically the same thing. This also does have the rubber feet, rubber stoppers, if you're playing on a table like you're seeing right here. And another thing that I found that's on this arcade stick that's pretty unique is the compartment where you put the cable in, which is pretty standard practice, has two notches on the doors as opposed to the typical one. And what this means is you can have the cable come out of either the bottom part of the arcade stick or the top of the arcade stick, which I think is actually pretty nice. There's no reason not to do that. Why not? Doesn't really, hurt. It's really a cool little feature. So not bad. I like that. Out of the box, this stick comes with the cleaning cloth, and it comes with, on the Xbox version, it comes with a cleaning cloth and a headset. And that headset will plug in right over here. Now, this is the PS3 version, so it doesn't even have the plugs. So it doesn't really matter in this context. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with this arcade stick when it comes to the case is this case is exceptionally good for people with big hands. Now, I get tons of people asking me what arcade sticks I recommend. And it really depends on you, it really depends on you, your personal preference as far as case weight, size. You know, some people like very small arcade sticks. Some people like them large. Personally speaking, this is just the right size. It's a little bit bigger, and I can go with a little bit smaller, but that's because my hands are small. But for those of you out there who, let's say, do not like sticks like the Hori V3SA or VXSA or any of the smaller arcade sticks, if you don't like those sticks because your hands are too big, this is the perfect stick for you. The V3SA Hori, the stick cuts off right about here. So you can imagine, if you're playing, the bottom of your wrist is going to be hanging off the bottom of that stick. Now, you know, sometimes people don't mind that. Even the VLX arcade stick, which is sitting over here, that stick cuts off right about here too. I'm looking at it right now. So for such a huge arcade stick that the VLX is, the wrist room is relatively small on that stick. So if you need a lot of wrist room, this is really the stick for you. And another thing that I find that's really nice about this stick is this rounded edge right here. Another problem that a lot of people have with arcade sticks is the chafing of their wrist as they're playing. You know, a lot of times there's a plexi over here, or there's maybe some screws sticking out, and you just get some kind of chafing. Nobody likes that shit, you know? So this stick has a lot of wrist room, but it also has this nice, comfortable, rounded edge, so you're just going to be able to play for hours, no problem. On top of that, the left side of this arcade stick has quite a bit of room as well for your left hand. So you're going to just be, it's going to be like just, you know, very comfortable, regardless of how big your hands are, which is a common problem, as I mentioned. So that's one thing that I think everyone should remember when they're considering purchasing this arcade stick. Think about hand size, think about wrist room, think about that, because this really delivers. Personally, I think that that's where this really delivers. Comfort and hand space is really nice. Now moving on. When it comes to the parts, so this is an interesting review for me, because obviously you open the box, you start playing, you start practicing your combos. Obviously I was playing Tekken, and I was doing some Nina combos and stuff, and I'm thinking, okay, this is working the way it should work. You know, it's a quality product, and it has, or at least I thought, it has Sanwa parts, and it's working just the same way Sanwa parts are supposed to work. I was really impressed. Then as I went on the different websites that carry this stick just to look up the specs, I realized that these are not Sanwa parts, which was shocking to me, because they feel so much like Sanwa parts that I've been using Sanwa parts for 10 years, and I couldn't tell the difference. I had to look it up, which is very, very interesting to me. What that tells me is Qanba is getting very good at their, you know, producing their products, which is very cool. And also, I mean, it's just really impressive that these are not Sanwa parts, but they feel so much like Sanwa parts. Really, really cool. So that being said, we can move on towards the light up features. Now, the arcade stick itself has a clear shaft cover and a clear dust cover and a clear ball top. So you're going to get the, you know, the light shining, illuminating through, and it's going to light all that stuff up. It looks really cool, especially if you're into this light up type of thing. All the buttons light up as well, and the inside 6 are blue, as you can see here. And the outside 2 are white, and the start button is also white. So that's really cool, interesting design. The theme of the arcade stick is basically white, blue, and chrome. So those are the colors that are kind of throughout here. The case itself, as I mentioned, it looks like it's some kind of plated paint or metallic paint, and it's chrome. So it is cool to the touch, which is nice. The plexi is clear. You can see through it, and you can see the metallic, you know, whatever plating is underneath, as well as you can see, like I mentioned, through the dust cover down into the arcade stick. You can see all the lighting up and whatnot, which is really cool. And the functions over here allow you to set how you want the stick to illuminate. As far as I know, the way it works is you hold down one of the buttons and you push another button, and that toggles between the three. And the three ways to present the LED lights are the way you see it right now, where every time you do an input with the lever, or every time you depress any of the buttons, they light up. There's another function where you can set it up to detect vibration in the game. So what that means in a fighting game will be every time you're struck, and every time the game decides a vibration is going to occur, like damage is taken or whatever, it'll light up for that. And another function is you can just set them all to be illuminated at all times. So these are, as far as I know, the 3 ways to display the LED function of this arcade stick. So all that is, you know, pretty cool. I've seen in the past, you know, I've seen a lot of arcade sticks. I've talked about a lot of arcade sticks, and I can tell you that people in the past have paid an arm and a leg for LED buttons for some dude in their basement to do a custom arcade stick. A friend of mine actually spent $270. This might have been 4 or 5 years ago. $270 to some dude so he can put LED buttons in his arcade stick and an LED shaft. That is just unbelievable. Atrocious. That is an atrocious price. Now you have the companies have come a long way, and now they're producing these types of products for people who want LED lights and stuff on their arcade sticks right out of the factory. So you're going to get, you know, quality merchandise as opposed to some D-bag, you know, making it in his basement. You know what I mean? So personally speaking, if you're going to go with an LED type of arcade stick with light up buttons and light up parts and stuff, I would much rather have a professional factory put it together than some guy. And, you know, you're going to pay less this way. You're going to get an affordable arcade stick that's going to be reliable. It's going to last you for years, and, you know, it's a great product. So that's how I look at it. You guys know me. I'm not all about the big lights and the big fluff and stuff, but people are. A lot of people like these types of features, and this stick produces them in an affordable and reliable way. That's really what it's all about when it comes to arcade sticks. You think about affordable, you think about reliable. I mean, that's really what you got to consider. So this stick, I think, is it passes with flying colors. I give it 5 meat spins out of 5. And, you know, I'm just really impressed overall. I don't think there's anything else that I'm forgetting. The weight of the arcade stick is 9 pounds, so it is relatively heavy. Just as a reference, the original TE arcade stick, I think is 6.2, somewhere around there, 6.2 pounds. So it's slightly heavier than a TE stick, but it's also larger than a TE stick. So that's where the extra weight comes from. I can also imagine, though I don't have the information right now, I can imagine that this arcade stick is heavier than the Qanba Q2, the regular one, the black one. It's probably heavier. I mean, that's just a guess based on the coating, the chrome coating on it, and as well as the LED parts inside. So maybe it's a negligible difference, but it is a little bit, it has a good weight to it. I personally think that, you know, when you're playing with the stick on your lap, there's a sweet spot of weight where you kind of want the arcade stick to fall in that category. Personally speaking, I think the VLX arcade stick is a little bit too cumbersome, and that one, not only is it large, but it's also 12.5 pounds or something. So very large, very heavy, very inconvenient, I think. But this falls within the sweet spot, you know. So this is going to be a reasonably sized and reasonably like a heavy arcade stick. Plus, don't forget about the handle on top, which makes it much more convenient. Another thing that I think should be mentioned is that the cable is 8.2 feet long. That is a little bit shorter than some arcade sticks out there. I've seen some that are 10 plus, but I personally never play any games more than 8 feet away from the console that I'm sitting at. So I can't imagine why you would need something like that, need that extra length in the cable, but if you do, it should be noted that this is 8.2, I think, feet long. I think that pretty much covers all the functionality of this arcade stick. I think a very large part of it is the presentation. The color scheme of, you know, white, blue, and chrome is really cool and unique and interesting. If you like this kind of a design, you can't get more with these colors, with the LEDs, you know, light ups and everything. You're not going to get a better factory-made stick as of right now. So it's really, you know, just really impressive when it comes down to all that. Personally, I tested it doing Nina combos, and, you know, I'm going to get back to that right now, actually. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And if I missed anything, or if you disagree with anything I've said, or would like to add to anything I've said here, make sure you leave comments, and I will go ahead and catch you guys next time. Take it easy.